My daughter-in-law Rebecca had no idea that when she dismissively told me to just sign the papers already, we don't have all day for this drama, at Mercy General Hospital, her helpless old mother-in-law actually owned the $875,000 family home. She'd been living in rent-free for 6 years, controlled the $1.2 million property portfolio that had been secretly funding their comfortable lifestyle, and held the deed to the commercial building that housed her husband's supposedly successful law practice, a real estate empire worth $2.3 million that would be transferred to my 68-year-old neighbor. Martha, within 72 hours of those dismissive words that revealed her true character during the most vulnerable moment of my life, before we dive into this incredible story of family betrayal and the hidden property empire my son and daughter-in-law never knew I controlled, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment telling me about your worst experience with ungrateful family members who treated you like a burden during medical emergencies. And subscribe so you never miss stories like this one about what happens when people assume elderly relatives are powerless and discover just how catastrophically wrong they can be when convenience overrides basic human decency and family loyalty. My name is Dorothy Martinez, I'm 70 years old. And this story begins 5 years ago when I made what seemed like a generous decision to help my struggling son Michael and his demanding wife Rebecca by secretly providing them with free housing and financial support while publicly maintaining the appearance of being just a retired social worker living on a modest pension, a decision that would reveal Rebecca's true character and teach both of them the most expensive lesson about dismissing elderly family members when you assume they're financially dependent and unable to defend themselves against family members who view them as inconvenient obstacles rather than people who sacrificed everything to give their children opportunities for success. But to understand how I ended up being told to just sign the papers already during the most terrifying medical emergency of my life, all while secretly controlling every aspect of my son's professional success and his family's comfortable housing situation, you need to know who I was before inheriting my late husband's real estate investment company changed everything. And before Rebecca's assumptions about my dependents and their independence led her to make the most catastrophic mistake of her marriage and financial life. For 32 years, I was Dorothy Martinez, Senior Social Worker and Family Crisis Coordinator at the Sacramento County Department of Social Services, one of California's most comprehensive family support networks serving over 380,000 residents across 12 regional offices throughout the greater Sacramento metropolitan area. I wasn't just managing individual family cases and coordinating emergency interventions, I was the strategic supervisor responsible for developing and implementing family preservation programs that helped thousands of families navigate housing crises, avoid homelessness, and secure stable living arrangements that protected children while supporting parents through temporary financial emergencies and long-term economic challenges. My responsibilities encompassed managing the department's $8.70 million annual emergency housing budget, coordinating with county and state housing authorities on affordable housing placement for families in crisis, developing partnerships with over 40 local landlords, property management companies, and nonprofit organizations to provide emergency and transitional housing for families who needed immediate assistance while working toward long-term housing stability and economic independence. But these professional achievements only tell part of the story about the complexity and critical importance of family housing advocacy at the institutional level. When you're responsible for ensuring that vulnerable families have safe, stable housing during their most desperate moments while helping them build toward permanent housing solutions, every placement decision carries enormous weight and consequences that extend far beyond individual family security to impact entire communities, school districts, and neighborhood stability patterns that determine whether children can remain in familiar schools and maintain supportive relationships during family crises. The Sacramento County Department of Social Services specialized in what we called holistic family housing support, a comprehensive approach that addressed not just immediate emergency shelter needs, but also long-term housing affordability planning, homeownership, education, landlord mediation services, and housing crisis prevention for families whose economic complexity required accessible advocacy and practical resources delivered with cultural sensitivity and understanding of the multiple barriers that prevent families from accessing stable, affordable housing in competitive rental markets. During the 2008 foreclosure crisis that devastated family housing stability throughout Northern California, I coordinated emergency family housing programs that literally saved hundreds of families from homelessness, family separation, and long-term housing displacement. Working 16-hour days for 10 months straight, I developed rapid response housing placement protocols that helped families transition from foreclosed homes to stable rental housing without children being removed from their schools or families being separated due to lack of appropriate emergency shelter options. I remember specifically working with the Rodriguez family, who had been targeted by predatory mortgage brokers during the housing bubble and were facing foreclosure on their home of 22 years, a modest 4-bedroom house in the Oak Park neighborhood where they had raised 5 children and built deep community connections. Their original $145,000 mortgage had been refinanced twice with increasingly predatory terms, hidden fees, and variable rates that had nearly tripled their monthly payments from $980 to over $2,600 just as Carlos Rodriguez lost his warehouse job and Maria Rodriguez was struggling with complications from diabetes that required expensive ongoing medical treatment and frequent doctor visits, when the Rodriguez family came to our emergency housing intervention program in September 2008. They were 6 weeks away from losing their home and had already been contacted by several foreclosure rescue companies that were actually scams designed to steal their remaining equity and leave them homeless. Carlos spoke limited English, Maria was overwhelmed by medical expenses and insurance complications, and their eldest daughter Carmen was preparing to drop out of UC Davis to work full-time and help save the family home while her younger siblings faced the possibility of changing schools and losing their established support networks. I spent 8 weeks working directly with the Rodriguez family, teaching them to understand their loan documents and identify the illegal practices their lenders had used, connecting them with a pro bono attorney who specialized in predatory lending cases involving immigrant families, and helping them develop negotiation strategies that ultimately saved their home and reduced their mortgage payments to $1,400 per month through a successful lawsuit against their original broker and a federally mandated loan modification program that prevented foreclosure. But more importantly, I helped the Rodriguez family understand how to build long-term housing security and protect themselves from future exploitation. We worked together to establish emergency savings accounts specifically for housing expenses, develop additional income streams through Maria's exceptional cooking skills that became a successful catering business, and create educational funds that ultimately enabled Carmen to finish college and 2 of their children to purchase their own homes using first-time buyer programs I helped them access through my network of community housing advocates. The Rodriguez family success story was replicated hundreds of times during the foreclosure crisis through comprehensive programs that addressed immediate housing emergencies while building long-term family stability and community wealth. These experiences taught me that housing advocacy isn't just about preventing individual family homelessness, it's about community empowerment and ensuring that vulnerable populations can't be exploited by predatory institutions that view housing desperation as profit opportunities while destroying neighborhood stability and family security. My expertise in community housing development extended far beyond the social services system to consulting relationships with housing authorities, nonprofit organizations, community development corporations, and municipal agencies throughout Northern California and the broader West Coast region. I helped develop affordable housing programs that enabled first-generation immigrants to achieve homeownership safely while avoiding the predatory lending practices that had destroyed so many communities, trained community leaders in housing advocacy and program management, and created resource guides and curriculum materials that smaller organizations could adapt to serve their own communities more effectively without requiring extensive housing expertise or resources. One of my most significant consulting achievements involved a 4-year partnership with the Hmong Community Housing Alliance, which was struggling to help refugee families navigate American housing systems and achieve stable housing despite language barriers, cultural differences, and unfamiliarity with rental agreements, credit requirements, and tenant rights concepts that most Americans take for granted but that represent completely foreign systems for families who come from subsistence agriculture backgrounds with no experience in market-based housing systems. Working with community elders, cultural leaders, and younger Hmong professionals who could serve as interpreters and cultural bridges, I spent 3 years developing culturally appropriate housing education materials that respected traditional Hmong values around extended family living arrangements while teaching practical skills for finding safe rental housing, understanding lease agreements, and building credit histories that would eventually enable homeownership opportunities. We created innovative programs that used traditional Hmong concepts of community mutual aid and collective responsibility to teach modern housing navigation principles, developed rotating savings groups that helped families accumulate security deposits and moving expenses while building credit histories, and established mentorship networks that connected experienced Hmong renters and homeowners with families just beginning to navigate American housing systems and tenant responsibilities. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. Over the 4-year program period, we helped 312 Hmong families secure stable rental housing, with an average rent-to-income ratio of 28% and a lease violation rate of less than 1%, compared to community average violation rates of 12 to 18% during the same period. More importantly, we created sustainable community housing support systems that continued operating successfully long after my formal consulting relationship ended, with program graduates becoming housing advocates and mentors for newer refugee families. These consulting opportunities provided substantial additional income that enhanced our family's already comfortable financial position from Luis's construction business management salary and my social services leadership role, but more importantly, they gave me comprehensive understanding of how housing knowledge creates power, how advocacy enables families to build stability across generations, and how people's true character emerges when they face housing stress or believe they can exploit others' apparent housing vulnerability for their own benefit. The most heartbreaking cases I encountered during my community housing advocacy work involved elderly community members whose adult children systematically exploited their parents' homeownership, accumulated housing equity, and property ownership. Through manipulation, emotional abuse, and financial fraud disguised as family assistance and estate planning. I witnessed dozens of situations where successful professionals, doctors, lawyers, business owners, real estate agents, would manipulate their aging parents into providing housing support, co-signing lease agreements they couldn't afford, or transferring property ownership under false pretenses while their parents believed they were helping their children achieve housing stability and protecting family wealth for future generations. I remember the case of Helen Kim, a 76-year-old widow whose son convinced her to add his name to the deed of her paid-off home in Elk Grove to help with estate planning and property tax benefits. Helen's son, David, was a successful accountant who presented himself as financially sophisticated and concerned about protecting his mother's assets from potential nursing home costs and estate taxes that could reduce his inheritance and family wealth preservation. Helen believed she was being responsible and proactive about estate planning while maintaining control of her home and housing independence. But I discovered during one of our senior housing advocacy workshops that David had actually taken out a $220,000 home equity loan against the property within 4 months of being added to the deed, using the money to fund a failed business investment and expensive lifestyle upgrades that had nothing to do with Helen's needs or housing security. When Helen finally understood what had happened, she was facing the potential loss of the home she had owned free and clear for 30 years, while David claimed that Helen had agreed to the home equity loan and was now trying to renege on family financial arrangements that he presented as legitimate estate planning and property investment strategies. The legal battle lasted 22 months and cost Helen most of her remaining savings, while David continued living in a $680,000 house purchased with money stolen from his mother's home equity, but beyond professional achievements and community impact. My social services career had taught me invaluable lessons about human nature, housing advocacy, and how people's behavior changes dramatically when they believe they can exploit others' housing vulnerability, especially when they assume that elderly parents are powerless and dependent rather than recognizing that apparent housing simplicity might actually mask sophisticated property management and strategic planning developed over decades of professional housing advocacy and community development experience. I had observed thousands of family housing dynamics during community education programs, crisis intervention services, and individual advocacy sessions over more than 3 decades of public service. I had seen devoted families who made genuine sacrifices to ensure elderly relatives maintained housing independence and dignity during retirement years, who included their parents respectfully in housing planning decisions, and who understood that caring for aging family members was both privilege and responsibility that required patience, creativity, and long-term commitment to their well-being and housing autonomy. But I had also witnessed families who exploited elderly members when housing became expensive or inconvenient, who viewed aging relatives as housing burdens to be managed rather than people deserving respect and consideration, and who treated elderly parents as sources of inheritance and property rather than understanding that family relationships should be based on love, mutual support, and appreciation for the sacrifices previous generations made to create housing opportunities for their children's success and prosperity. These observations had given me sophisticated understanding of housing exploitation patterns and the warning signs that indicate when people view elderly relatives as inconveniences to be managed or resources to be accessed rather than family members deserving care and respect without conditions or expectations of financial compensation for basic human decency and family loyalty during challenging periods of aging and housing transitions. The warning signs were remarkably consistent across different families, communities, and socioeconomic backgrounds. Adult children who suddenly became very interested in their parents' living arrangements and property ownership when those parents reached retirement age and gained access to housing equity, property appreciation, insurance settlements, or inherited real estate that represented potential wealth transfers or housing opportunities for the next generation. Adult children who began making suggestions about downsizing or simplifying their parents' housing situations in ways that would eliminate property maintenance expenses, create access to housing equity, or position the adult children to benefit from reduced housing costs, inheritance acceleration, or control over their parents' property assets and housing decision-making autonomy. Adult children who gradually took control of their parents' property deeds, insurance policies, utility accounts, and legal documents under the guise of helping with property management, while actually positioning themselves to benefit from their parents' accumulated housing wealth or to make housing decisions that prioritize the adult children's convenience and financial benefit over their parents' autonomy, dignity, and long-term housing security. Most concerning were the adult children who systematically distanced themselves from their elderly parents once they believed those parents had nothing left to offer financially, treating caregiving and family support as burdens rather than recognizing them as opportunities to demonstrate love, respect, and appreciation for the housing sacrifices their parents had made throughout their lives to provide opportunities and security for their children's education, career development, and family formation. My marriage to Luis Martinez had been a partnership built on shared values of education, community service, housing advocacy, and long-term thinking that enabled us to build substantial wealth while maintaining strong family relationships and community involvement that reflected our commitment to using our resources and expertise to benefit others rather than simply accumulating property for personal comfort and security. Luis was a construction project manager who had worked for Martinez & Sons Construction for 28 years, specializing in affordable housing development projects that provided quality homes for working families throughout Northern California, while prioritizing environmental sustainability and long-term maintenance efficiency over short-term cost savings that could create expensive problems for future homeowners and community development. One example of Luis's project management philosophy involved a complex affordable housing development in the Meadowview neighborhood that required balancing increased housing density with environmental protection, community character preservation, and economic development goals that seemed impossible to reconcile using traditional construction approaches that prioritized efficiency and cost control over comprehensive community impact assessment. Luis spent 2 years developing an innovative design solution that actually enhanced environmental protection while increasing housing availability, preserved neighborhood character through creative architectural and landscaping strategies, and created economic development opportunities for local small businesses that had been struggling with gentrification pressures and limited community investment. The project not only solved the immediate housing shortage but became a model for sustainable community development that was studied and replicated throughout California and the broader West Coast region. Luis's willingness to invest extra time in community consultation and creative problem-solving created housing benefits that extended far beyond immediate shelter needs to improve environmental protection, community stability, and economic development for decades. The total value of Luis's construction expertise and strategic project management had contributed to affordable housing improvements worth over $150 million during his career, while his reputation for integrity, innovation, and community focus had made him a sought-after consultant for complex housing development projects throughout Northern California even after his retirement from construction management in 2016. But Luis was also a careful observer of human behavior who had noticed concerning patterns in our son Michael's approach to family relationships, work ethic, and housing responsibility that suggested he might not be prepared for the independence and self-sufficiency he claimed to value while actually depending on family support he never acknowledged or appreciated. Dorothy, Michael is intelligent and capable of professional success, Luis had explained to me during one of our evening conversations about family relationships and our son's development, but he's consistently demonstrated patterns of taking credit for advantages he didn't earn, minimizing others' contributions to his success, and treating family support as entitlement rather than recognizing it as generosity that requires appreciation and reciprocal care when circumstances change. Luis had noticed that Michael's approach to career development and professional success consistently involved seeking opportunities that offered maximum personal recognition and financial benefit while minimizing his acknowledgement of the family resources, professional connections, and housing support that had made his achievements possible. During Michael's law school years at UC Davis School of Law, where he studied family law and real estate litigation, his academic success and internship opportunities had been significantly enhanced by family connections through my social services relationships with community legal aid organizations and Luis's professional network of contractors, government officials, and housing advocacy firms that provided Michael with internship opportunities, professional mentorship, and job placement. assistance that most law students couldn't access without family advantages in housing and community development sectors. But Michael's approach to these opportunities revealed troubling patterns of entitlement and ingratitude that would later characterize his treatment of family relationships when he believed he no longer needed our support and could achieve success independently without acknowledging or reciprocating the assistance that had made his achievements possible. Michael seems to view our help as evidence of his own merit rather than recognizing it as family investment in his future that creates obligations for gratitude and eventual reciprocal support, Louise observed with concern about Michael's character, development and long-term approach to family relationships and housing responsibility. When I helped him get that internship with the Sacramento County Legal Aid Housing Project, he told his law school classmates that he had been selected based on his impressive academic record and interview performance, without mentioning that Patricia Santos is my longtime colleague who hired Michael as a favor to me, Luis explained, describing the pattern of selective memory and credit-taking that would eventually define Michael's relationship with family support and assistance. When your social services contacts helped him understand housing law and tenant advocacy during his law school studies, he presented himself to potential employers as someone who had developed expertise in housing law through his own research and academic focus, rather than acknowledging that you had personally introduced him to housing advocates and helped him understand how to navigate legal aid systems that most law students never discover. This pattern of minimizing family contributions while maximizing personal credit for achievements would become a consistent characteristic of Michael's approach to success, leading him to develop an inflated sense of his own capabilities and independence while maintaining dependence on family resources he preferred not to acknowledge or appreciate. But Michael's character issues became even more concerning when he married Rebecca Thompson in 2018, an ambitious marketing coordinator who seemed to view Michael's family relationships primarily as opportunities for personal advancement and housing benefits rather than recognizing them as relationships requiring mutual respect, appreciation, and long-term commitment to family support during challenging periods. Rebecca had grown up in a wealthy family in Marin County, where her father owned a successful commercial real estate development company and her mother managed luxury vacation rental properties that catered to wealthy clients seeking exclusive accommodations in expensive resort communities. Rebecca's upbringing had provided her with extensive exposure to property management and real estate investment, but it had also created assumptions about housing entitlement and property access that would later influence her treatment of family relationships and housing arrangements. During their courtship and early marriage, Rebecca consistently demonstrated attitudes toward family financial relationships that suggested she viewed Michael's parents as potential resources to be managed rather than people deserving respect and consideration for their accumulated experience and continuing contributions to family relationships and housing stability. The stage was being set for Rebecca to face the ultimate test of her character during a family crisis that would reveal whether she viewed her elderly mother-in-law as a family member deserving care and respect, or as an inconvenient burden to be managed when providing support required personal sacrifice and disrupted her comfortable lifestyle built on assumptions about housing control and property ownership that she had never questioned or acknowledged. But what Rebecca didn't understand was that the mother-in-law she was planning to pressure during our family's greatest crisis was actually controlling significant property resources that had been secretly supporting her comfortable lifestyle for years, and that her treatment of her elderly mother-in-law during our time of need would determine whether she continued benefiting from family property ownership or learned the devastating cost of assuming that aging relatives are powerless and can be dismissed without consequences when caregiving becomes inconvenient or interferes with personal priorities and lifestyle preferences. But the housing expertise I had developed through decades of community advocacy and crisis intervention was only the foundation for the property building capabilities that would ultimately give me the power to teach Rebecca the most expensive lesson of her life about family loyalty and the true cost of dismissing elderly relatives when you assume they're financially powerless and unable to defend themselves against exploitation and betrayal. The transformation from respected public servant earning a comfortable middle-class salary to silent controller of a multi-million-dollar property empire began in April 2019, when I received a phone call that would change everything about my family's economic circumstances and my ability to secretly test Rebecca's character while maintaining the appearance of being a dependent elderly parent living on a modest pension and Social Security benefits. Mrs. Martinez, this is Jennifer Walsh from Coastal Property Management and Estate Services. The attorney's voice was professional but warm as she delivered news that would reshape my entire understanding of family wealth and property ownership opportunities. I'm calling regarding the estate of your late husband, Luis Martinez, who passed away last month. I understand this is a difficult time, but there are some rather substantial property assets that require immediate attention and decision-making. that we weren't fully aware of until completing the comprehensive estate inventory. Luis Martinez had been my beloved husband for 38 years, a dedicated construction project manager who had seemed to earn a comfortable living managing affordable housing developments throughout Northern California. But what I discovered during the estate settlement process was that Luis had been quietly building a sophisticated property investment portfolio over nearly 2 decades, using his construction industry knowledge and professional relationships to identify undervalued properties, distressed sales, and development opportunities that he had systematically acquired and improved using profits from previous investments and his expertise in property renovation and market timing. Our relationship had been built on complete trust and mutual respect. But Luis had chosen to handle the property investments independently to avoid creating financial stress or decision-making pressure for me while I focused on my demanding social services career and community advocacy work. He had managed the entire portfolio discreetly, reinvesting profits for continued growth while ensuring that our daily lifestyle remained comfortable but modest, never revealing the scope of wealth he was accumulating for our family's long-term security and future estate planning. Mrs. Martinez, your husband's property portfolio includes several significant assets that we need to discuss in detail, Jennifer Walsh explained during our initial phone conversation. The primary components include a rental property portfolio currently valued at approximately $1.8 million consisting of 12 residential units across Sacramento County, a commercial property in downtown Sacramento worth approximately $950,000 that generates monthly rental income of $12,400. 2 undeveloped lots in Roseville valued at $380,000 that have approved permits for residential development, and liquid assets including property management accounts and construction escrow funds totaling approximately $420,000. I sat in stunned silence as Jennifer continued explaining the scope of Luis's accumulated property wealth and the legal processes required for estate transfer. Trying to comprehend that my beloved husband had quietly built a property empire worth over $3.5 million while maintaining our modest lifestyle and never mentioning the extraordinary success he was achieving in real estate investment and property development throughout Northern California. Additionally, Jennifer continued, your husband established a property management company called Golden Valley Property Services in 2012, which has been managing rental properties and providing property maintenance services throughout the Sacramento metropolitan area. The company currently manages properties worth approximately $4.2 million for various private investors, generating consistent monthly management fees while helping property owners maximize rental income and maintain high-quality housing for working families who need affordable, well-maintained rental options. The full scope of Luis's property empire was almost incomprehensible. Beyond his personal property assets worth over $3.5 million, he had created a property management business that controlled nearly $4.2 million in additional real estate while generating substantial monthly income and providing valuable property services to communities that needed access to fair, affordable rental housing managed by professionals who understood both property maintenance and tenant advocacy. Your husband left detailed instructions about his wishes for estate distribution and business continuation, Jennifer explained. He specifically requested that you be given complete information about his investment strategies, property management operations, and the community impact of his property services company, because he believed your background in housing advocacy and community development would enable you to continue his work of providing ethical property management while building additional wealth for family legacy purposes and community housing development. Over the following 4 weeks, I made multiple trips to various properties and management offices to meet with Jennifer Walsh, property managers, real estate advisors, and business consultants who had been working with Luis to manage his various investments and property operations. Each meeting revealed additional layers of Luis's sophisticated approach to property building and his commitment to using real estate resources to benefit communities while generating sustainable returns that could support long-term community development goals and family security. Luis's residential rental portfolio was masterfully diversified across different neighborhoods and property types that provided stable rental income while serving working families who needed access to quality housing at reasonable prices. His investment strategy had been based on identifying properties in stable neighborhoods with good schools and community amenities, renovating them to high standards using his construction expertise, and maintaining them excellently while charging rental rates that were fair and affordable for working families rather than pursuing maximum profit extraction that could price out long-term residents and destabilize community housing. His commercial property in downtown Sacramento housed 4 small businesses, a family-owned restaurant, an independent bookstore, a non-profit organization providing job training services for formerly incarcerated individuals, and a community health clinic. Serving uninsured families. Rather than maximizing rental income through aggressive pricing, Luis had maintained reasonable rental rates that allowed these businesses to thrive while generating steady income and contributing to downtown economic development and community stability. The undeveloped lots in Roseville represented Luis's most forward-thinking investment strategy. He had purchased the properties in 2015 for $180,000 total, spent 3 years navigating the permit and approval process to secure development rights for single-family homes, and had created development-ready parcels worth $380,000 that could be sold to builders or developed independently to create affordable housing for first-time homebuyers who were struggling to access homeownership in California's expensive housing market. But the most impressive aspect of Luis's property legacy was Golden Valley Property Services, the property management company he had established during the post-recession period when many property owners were struggling to maintain their investments and provide quality housing for tenants who were dealing with economic uncertainty and employment challenges that affected their ability to pay rent consistently while maintaining stable housing situations. Luis had started the property management company with his expertise in construction and property maintenance, offering comprehensive services that included tenant screening, rent collection, maintenance coordination, and property improvement planning that helped property owners maintain their investments while ensuring that tenants received responsive service and quality housing that met safety standards and provided stable, comfortable living environments for families who depended on rental housing for their long-term housing security. Over 7 years of operation, Golden Valley Property Services had provided property management for over $15 million worth of real estate throughout the Sacramento metropolitan area, with a tenant satisfaction rate of 94% and a property vacancy rate of less than 3%, significantly better than industry averages during the same period. The company's success was based on Luis's commitment to treating both property owners and tenants fairly, maintaining properties to high standards that preserved investment value while providing quality housing, and developing ongoing relationships with clients that provided support and flexibility during temporary challenges that could affect either rental income or housing stability. Your husband was extremely proud of the community impact his property management company achieved, explained Robert Chen, the business consultant who had helped Luis manage Golden Valley Property Services since its founding. He tracked not only financial performance but also the broader housing benefits for families and communities who gained access to well-maintained, fairly priced rental housing that provided stability and community connection rather than viewing tenants as profit sources to be maximized. For example, we helped the Garcia family maintain stable housing in their Elk Grove rental property for 6 years, even when Roberto Garcia was temporarily unemployed during the 2016 construction industry slowdown, Robert continued, describing the kind of community impact that made Luis's business philosophy meaningful beyond simple property management and profit generation. Roberto was a skilled carpenter who had worked on several of Luis's construction projects, but the economic downturn meant fewer residential construction jobs and reduced income for several months. Instead of evicting the family during temporary financial difficulties, Luis worked with them to modify their rent temporarily and helped Roberto find construction work with other contractors in our professional network. The Garcia family never missed a payment once Roberto returned to steady employment, and they eventually purchased their own home using savings they accumulated while living in stable, affordable rental housing. The Garcia family success story was repeated dozens of times throughout Golden Valley Property Services management portfolio, demonstrating that ethical property management could generate sustainable profits while providing genuine community benefit and helping working families build stability and wealth through access to quality rental housing that didn't exploit temporary financial difficulties or housing vulnerability. Luis's business records showed that Golden Valley Property Services had helped 127 families maintain stable housing during temporary employment or income challenges, provided property maintenance services that created over 180 local jobs for contractors and service providers, and managed rental properties that housed over 300 families in quality, affordable housing throughout the Sacramento metropolitan area. But beyond the impressive community impact statistics, Golden Valley Property Services had generated substantial financial returns that demonstrated the viability of ethical property management as both community development strategy and wealth building opportunity. The company's consistent profitability had enabled Luis to expand property acquisition while building personal wealth and creating a sustainable business model that could continue operating long-term to benefit both property owners and tenants, while contributing to community housing stability. Your husband's property management company currently generates approximately $28,000 in monthly net income after all operating expenses, property maintenance reserves, and business reinvestment, Robertson explained during our review of company financial performance. The managed property portfolio is performing exceptionally well, with current rent collection at 97.8% and only 2 properties experiencing vacancy issues out of nearly 80 units managed since 2012. More importantly, the company has built strong relationships with real estate professionals, community organizations, and government agencies throughout the region who refer property owners and appreciate our commitment to fair property management practices and community development priorities rather than simply profit maximization and tenant exploitation. The monthly income from Golden Valley Property Services, combined with rental income from Luis's personal property portfolio and appreciation from his real estate investments, created a total monthly income stream of approximately $45,000, more than triple my previous annual salary from the Sacramento County Department of Social Services and sufficient to support a very comfortable lifestyle while reinvesting substantial amounts for continued property acquisition and community impact. But the most significant aspect of inheriting Luis's property empire wasn't the immediate wealth or monthly income, it was gaining access to sophisticated property management tools and real estate relationships that would enable me to secretly support Michael's career development and family lifestyle while maintaining the appearance of being a modest retired social worker living on Social Security and pension benefits. Within 8 months of completing the estate transfer process, I had established a complex but completely legal structure of trust funds, property management entities, and investment accounts that would allow me to provide substantial housing and financial support to Michael's family while hiding the source of assistance and maintaining my public identity as someone with limited financial resources who might eventually need Michael and Rebecca's support and assistance as I aged and faced potential health challenges or increased living expenses. The first step in this strategic plan involved establishing the Martinez Family Property Trust, a legal entity that would hold most of Luis's assets while providing me with complete control over investment decisions, income distribution, and long-term planning for wealth preservation and community impact. The trust structure protected assets from potential liability issues while creating tax advantages and ensuring that wealth could be transferred efficiently to future generations or charitable organizations depending on family circumstances and relationships. Working with Jennifer Walsh and a financial planning team recommended by Luis's property advisors, I restructured Golden Valley Property Services to operate as a subsidiary of the Martinez Family Property Trust while expanding property management operations into new market areas where my knowledge of community organizations, housing advocates, and local economic conditions could enhance business development and community impact. The expansion of Golden Valley Property Services into new markets created opportunities to provide property management and housing services to families and property owners I had previously helped through social services housing advocacy programs. Continuing my community development work while generating substantial income and building additional wealth through ethical property management practices that benefited both property owners and tenants, but more importantly for my long-term family strategy. Expanding the property management business enabled me to secretly provide housing and financial support to Michael's law practice and personal housing needs without revealing the source of assistance or acknowledging my role in his professional success and family housing security. In November 2019, Michael contacted me with what he presented as exciting news about a major career opportunity that would enable his law practice to expand operations and increase profitability through a partnership with a regional legal aid organization that required additional office space, equipment purchases, and staff hiring that would create cash flow challenges during the business expansion period. "Mom, I have incredible news about my law practice," Michael announced during a family dinner at his house, speaking with obvious excitement about professional developments he clearly viewed as evidence of his legal expertise and entrepreneurial success. "I've been selected to partner with the Northern California Housing Rights Legal Collective to handle housing discrimination and tenant advocacy cases throughout the Sacramento region, and this partnership could triple our case volume within 12 months. "That sounds wonderful, Michael," I replied with genuine enthusiasm about his professional success, while also recognizing this conversation as an opportunity to begin testing his character and observing his treatment of family housing relationships. When he believed he needed assistance from people he viewed as having limited resources and potential future dependency needs. "What kind of support or assistance do you need for this practice expansion?" I asked, curious about whether Michael would acknowledge family financial limitations and express appreciation for any assistance we might provide, or whether he would Approach family support as entitlement rather than generosity that required gratitude and reciprocal care when circumstances changed. Well, the expansion requires about $240,000 in upfront costs for new office lease deposits, legal software and equipment purchases, and staff salaries during the first 8 months while we build the partnership relationship and establish consistent revenue streams from housing advocacy cases. Michael explained with confidence that suggested he had already developed plans for accessing this substantial amount of capital. I've been exploring different financing options, including bank loans and investor partnerships, but the interest rates and equity requirements are pretty challenging for a small law practice without extensive credit history or substantial collateral assets for legal services businesses. Rebecca and I exchanged glances across the dinner table, both recognizing this conversation as a pivotal moment that would reveal Michael's assumptions about family financial capacity and his approach to requesting assistance from elderly parents who might be approaching their own period of increased financial needs and potential dependency on family support during aging and health transitions. Michael, $240,000 is a substantial amount of money that represents more than Mom and I have in our retirement savings, I said truthfully, based on the modest assets Luis and I had publicly accumulated through our public service careers before inheriting his secret property empire. We want to support your legal career success, but we also need to be responsible about our own financial security as we age and potentially face increased medical expenses or long-term care needs. Michael's response to this honest explanation of apparent family financial limitations revealed troubling assumptions about elderly parents' obligations to sacrifice their security for adult children's business ventures, and his unwillingness to acknowledge the risks he was asking us to assume for his professional ambitions and career advancement. Mom, this isn't just about my legal practice success, Michael replied with slight irritation that suggested he found our financial limitations inconvenient and potentially detrimental to opportunities he considered essential for his career development. This housing advocacy partnership represents a huge opportunity for our entire family's financial future, because my increased income and practice growth will enable me to provide better support for you as you get older and need more assistance with living expenses and healthcare costs. Besides, this isn't really a risk because the legal collective partnership is already established and guaranteed for 5 years, so the revenue is essentially secured and the practice expansion is practically certain to succeed, he continued, with confidence that revealed his unwillingness to acknowledge the legitimate financial risks and business uncertainties that could affect repayment of family loans or business investment. If you could provide some of the expansion capital, either as a loan or an investment in the practice, you would actually benefit from my success while helping secure your own financial future through my increased ability to support you during retirement. This conversation revealed that Michael viewed family financial assistance as investment opportunity rather than recognizing it as potential sacrifice that could affect our retirement security and long-term financial planning. He was presenting his business needs as family benefits while minimizing the risks we would assume and the impact on our own financial stability if his practice expansion failed or generated lower returns than projected. Michael, we appreciate that you want to include us in your professional success, I replied diplomatically, but we also need to understand that providing $240,000 for practice expansion would represent most of our available savings and could seriously affect our financial security if the business doesn't perform as expected or if we face unexpected medical expenses or other emergencies that require immediate access to capital. The legal services industry can be unpredictable, funding for legal aid organizations can be reduced or eliminated, and practice expansion often involves unforeseen costs and challenges that affect profitability and cash flow in ways that even experienced attorneys can't anticipate or control through careful planning. Michael's response to my reasonable concerns about financial risk and business uncertainty revealed his impatience with family members who didn't share his optimism about guaranteed professional success, and his unwillingness to acknowledge legitimate concerns about protecting elderly parents' financial security during potentially risky investment decisions. Mom, I understand that you're being cautious about financial planning, but this opportunity is different from typical business risks because we already have guaranteed partnership revenue and established legal aid relationships, Michael argued, with growing frustration about family skepticism regarding his legal judgment and financial projections. Besides, even if there were some unexpected challenges or temporary setbacks, my law practice has been profitable for 4 years and I have the experience and professional relationships to handle any problems that might develop during the expansion process. More importantly, if you don't help me with this expansion, I might miss this opportunity entirely and lose the potential for practice growth that would benefit everyone in our family through increased income and financial stability that could support all of us during the next 20 years. Michael was essentially arguing that family financial security depended on supporting his practice expansion, while simultaneously minimizing the risks and pressuring us to prioritize his business needs over our own retirement planning and financial protection during a period when elderly adults typically become more conservative about investment risks and capital preservation. But what made this conversation particularly revealing was Rebecca's behavior during the entire discussion. She had remained almost completely silent while Michael presented his business opportunity and financial needs, but her body language and facial expressions clearly indicated that she viewed this conversation as a necessary formality rather than a genuine request for family assistance that required appreciation and acknowledgement of potential family sacrifice. Rebecca sat at the dinner table scrolling through her phone during most of Michael's presentation, occasionally looking up to nod approvingly when he described the potential income increases and professional recognition that would result from the practice expansion. But she showed no interest in the family financial implications or the risks that Michael was asking us to assume for his career advancement. When I mentioned our concerns about using retirement savings for business investment, Rebecca finally spoke up with a comment that revealed her fundamental assumptions about elderly parents' financial obligations and her expectations about family financial relationships. "Dorothy, I think you're overthinking the risks involved in Michael's practice expansion," Rebecca said with the tone of someone providing helpful perspective to family members who lacked sophisticated understanding of business opportunities and financial planning. Michael's legal expertise and professional relationships are solid foundations for business growth, and this partnership represents exactly the kind of opportunity that creates long-term family financial security. Besides, successful families invest in each other's opportunities rather than hoarding money in low-yield retirement accounts that don't provide real returns or adapt to changing economic conditions, she continued with confidence that revealed her assumption that family financial planning should prioritize younger generations' business opportunities over elderly parents' security and independence. If you and Luis could provide the expansion capital, you would actually be participating in Michael's success while diversifying your retirement portfolio into legal services rather than depending entirely on fixed income and pension benefits that might not keep pace with inflation or provide adequate support during extended retirement years. Rebecca's contribution to the conversation revealed that she viewed family financial assistance not as potential sacrifice requiring appreciation, but as strategic investment opportunity that would benefit everyone involved while demonstrating sophisticated financial planning and family cooperation. She was presenting elderly parents' financial support as participation in family success rather than recognizing it as generosity that could affect our retirement security and require genuine gratitude and reciprocal care. But what was most concerning about Rebecca's attitude was her complete lack of acknowledgement that we had already provided substantial housing support by allowing them to live rent-free in what she believed was Michael's family home, without any recognition that housing costs represent most families' largest monthly expense and that free housing was equivalent to providing thousands of dollars in monthly financial assistance. This conversation continued for nearly 3 hours, with Michael becoming increasingly frustrated by our questions about business risks, repayment timelines, and impact on family financial security, while Rebecca provided periodic commentary that consistently minimized our legitimate concerns and positioned family financial assistance as investment opportunity rather than recognizing it as potential sacrifice requiring appreciation and careful consideration. But what Michael and Rebecca didn't realize was that this entire conversation was providing invaluable information about their character, priorities, and treatment of elderly family members when they believed those family members had limited financial resources and might eventually need their support and assistance during aging and health transitions. I was observing not just Michael's legal expertise and professional confidence, but his fundamental approach to family financial relationships and his willingness to pressure elderly parents into risky investments that could affect their retirement security for the benefit of his practice expansion and career advancement. And I was learning about Rebecca's assumptions about family financial dynamics and her expectation that elderly relatives should prioritize younger generations' opportunities over their own security and independence. Every argument they made about guaranteed success, every expression of frustration with our financial limitations, and every suggestion that family security depended on supporting Michael's practice was revealing aspects of their personalities that would ultimately determine whether they deserved access to the substantial property wealth I was secretly controlling and could provide without affecting my own financial security. 4 days after our family dinner conversation about practice expansion financing, I made a decision that would begin the most sophisticated character test of Michael and Rebecca's lives while providing them with the financial support they needed to achieve professional success without acknowledging or appreciating the true source of assistance that would make their achievements possible. Using the expanded property management operations of Golden Valley Property Services, I arranged for Michael's law practice to receive office space in the downtown commercial building that I secretly owned through the Martinez Family Property Trust, providing him with below-market rent and excellent facility amenities that appeared to come from fortunate lease negotiations with an independent property management company rather than recognizing that family assistance had made this opportunity possible. The lease arrangement was handled through property managers and legal representatives who had no apparent connection to me or my family, creating the appearance that Michael had successfully secured premium office space through his own professional networking and negotiation skills rather than understanding that family support had provided him with office facilities that would normally cost 40% more than he was paying through my secret property ownership. Michael was thrilled about securing excellent office space that would enable his law practice expansion while protecting our family's retirement savings and avoiding the financial risks he had been asking us to assume for his business venture. He proudly announced that his professional reputation and legal expertise had enabled him to access commercial real estate opportunities that many small law practices couldn't obtain, demonstrating his business acumen and financial sophistication. But what Michael never suspected was that his independent office lease was actually being subsidized by his supposedly financially limited mother, who was now secretly controlling his professional success while observing his treatment of elderly parents he believed had nothing to offer except potential future dependency and caregiving obligations that could become inconvenient burdens interfering with his professional ambitions and personal lifestyle. The stage was being set for the ultimate test of Michael and Rebecca's character, a test that would reveal whether they viewed their elderly mother and mother-in-law as family members deserving care and respect during times of crisis, or as inconvenient obligations to be dismissed when providing support required personal sacrifice and disrupted the comfortable lifestyle that had been built on family assistance they never acknowledged or appreciated. But Michael and Rebecca had no idea that the mother and mother-in-law they were planning to eventually view as burdens was actually the source of their housing security and professional success, and that their treatment of their elderly relative during our family's greatest crisis would determine whether they continued benefiting from secret family wealth or learned the devastating cost of assuming that aging relatives are powerless and can be discarded without consequences when caregiving becomes inconvenient. The success of Michael's law practice expansion, subsidized secretly through my Golden Valley Property Services while he believed he had secured independent commercial real estate through his professional networking skills, provided the perfect foundation for implementing a comprehensive long-term strategy that would test both his and Rebecca's character while building an even more substantial property empire that could either reward genuine family loyalty or deliver consequences more devastating than they could imagine for dismissing elderly relatives during their time of greatest need. Over the 24 months following Michael's office lease arrangement, his law practice experienced exactly the kind of growth and success he had projected, expanding his housing advocacy caseload and establishing his reputation as a dedicated legal advocate for tenant rights and affordable housing throughout Northern California. But what Michael never suspected was that much of his professional success was being quietly supported through the extensive network of community relationships and property management connections I had developed during my decades of housing advocacy work and Luis's property management operations. The Martinez Family Property Trust had grown significantly beyond Luis's original $3.5 million estate through strategic reinvestment of monthly rental income, expansion of Golden Valley Property Services into new markets, and carefully selected property acquisitions that generated additional rental income while building long-term wealth and providing quality housing options for working families who couldn't access homeownership through traditional banking systems or afford market-rate rental housing in California's increasingly expensive housing market. By early 2022, the trust controlled assets worth approximately $6.8 million, including an expanded rental property portfolio of 32 residential units throughout Sacramento County generating monthly net income of $47,000, the expanded commercial property holdings worth $1.8 million that produced an additional $18,000 in monthly rental income, and a diversified investment portfolio of real estate investment trusts and municipal development bonds that provided both growth potential and steady dividend income of approximately $12,000 monthly. The total monthly income from all trust assets had reached $77,000, more than most families earn annually and sufficient to support an extremely comfortable lifestyle while continuing to reinvest substantial amounts for property acquisition and community impact that would benefit hundreds of families and small businesses over the coming decades while building generational wealth that could support family members who demonstrated genuine character and appreciation for family relationships. But more importantly for my long-term family strategy, the expanded financial resources and property management networks controlled by the Martinez Family Property Trust enabled me to provide increasingly sophisticated support for Michael's professional success and family lifestyle while maintaining complete secrecy about the source of assistance and preserving my public identity as a modest retired social worker who might eventually need Michael and Rebecca's support during aging and potential health challenges. The second phase of my character testing strategy involved purchasing the family home that Michael and Rebecca had been renting since their marriage in 2018, providing them with free housing while they believed they were benefiting from generous lease terms with an independent landlord who appreciated reliable tenants and offered favorable rental arrangements for responsible young professionals. In March 2022, when Michael and Rebecca began discussing the possibility of purchasing their rental home to build equity and establish property ownership, I discreetly arranged for the Martinez Family Property Trust to purchase the $875,000 four-bedroom house in the Pocket neighborhood that would provide them with free housing while generating property appreciation and building real estate equity that could support long-term wealth accumulation and community development goals. The property purchase was handled through a complex but completely legal structure of property management entities and legal representatives that ensured Michael and Rebecca would never suspect my involvement in providing their housing security and ongoing residential support. To them, the transaction appeared to involve negotiations with Sunset Property Management, a legitimate residential real estate company that specialized in single-family home rentals and had no apparent connection to my family or financial resources. "Dorothy, we have great news about our housing situation," Rebecca announced during one of our monthly family dinners, speaking with obvious satisfaction about residential developments she attributed to their financial planning and professional success. "The property management company that owns our rental house offered us an incredible lease-to-own arrangement that's much better than anything else available in the current real estate market." "That's wonderful, Rebecca," I replied with genuine enthusiasm about their continued residential stability, while also privately noting her assumption that favorable housing terms resulted from their negotiation skills rather than recognizing the possibility that external factors might be contributing to opportunities that seemed unusually advantageous for young professionals with limited savings and moderate income levels. "The monthly lease payment will actually decrease by $400 from what we're currently paying, and the property management company agreed to apply 30% of our monthly payments toward a future down payment for home ownership," Rebecca continued, describing housing terms that were indeed generous but had been structured specifically to support their housing stability while testing their appreciation for advantages they didn't understand or acknowledge. "Plus, the lease agreement includes all maintenance, property improvements, and landscaping services at no additional cost, which will save us thousands of dollars annually while ensuring that our housing remains excellent quality and well-maintained." Rebecca's description of their housing arrangement revealed that she viewed favorable lease terms as evidence of their financial competence and negotiation abilities, rather than recognizing that unusually generous housing conditions might indicate external support or assistance that warranted investigation, appreciation, or at least acknowledgement that housing success often involves factors beyond individual merit and financial planning. Over the following months, as Michael and Rebecca settled into their improved housing arrangement and continued expanding their lifestyle expectations and spending patterns, I observed their growing confidence about their financial independence and professional capabilities, along with increasingly dismissive attitudes toward family relationships and their assumptions about elderly parents' potential future dependency on their success and support. "Our housing costs are so reasonable now that we're able to save substantial money for future investments and lifestyle improvements," Rebecca would announce during family visits, speaking with satisfaction about financial achievements she clearly viewed as validation of their financial planning skills and professional success. "We're generating consistent monthly savings that exceed our housing expenses, and we're building equity toward homeownership while maintaining excellent living conditions and neighborhood amenities," she would continue, describing success that was indeed real but had been significantly supported through housing cost savings and property advantages she never suspected were being provided by family resources. "Honestly, we're feeling much more confident about our financial independence and long-term wealth-building prospects than we were when we first got married and were struggling with high rental costs and limited savings opportunities," Rebecca would add, revealing her growing assumption that housing success had eliminated any potential need for family financial support or assistance during future challenges or economic uncertainties. But what concerned me most about Rebecca's increasing financial confidence was her corresponding decrease in appreciation for family relationships and her growing assumptions about role reversals that would make elderly parents dependent on younger generations' success rather than acknowledging the ongoing mutual support and interdependence that should characterize healthy family relationships across generations and changing circumstances. During family gatherings and casual conversations, Rebecca began making comments that revealed her expectations about future caregiving arrangements and financial responsibilities that positioned herself and Michael as the family's primary financial resources and decision-makers, while viewing me as potential burden who would eventually need management and support rather than recognizing me as capable adult who had successfully built wealth and managed complex responsibilities throughout my career. Dorothy, now that Michael's law practice is stable and our housing situation is secure, we want you to know that you don't need to worry about financial security during retirement, Rebecca announced during a family dinner in summer 2022, speaking with the tone of someone offering generous assistance rather than acknowledging decades of family support that had contributed to their current success. If you ever need help with medical expenses, home maintenance, or living costs that exceed your retirement income, we're in a good position to provide financial assistance and make sure you're comfortable and well cared for as you get older. That's very thoughtful of you, Rebecca, I replied diplomatically, but I have been planning for retirement for decades and feel confident about my financial security and ability to maintain my independence during my later years without creating financial burdens for you and Michael or interfering with your own family's financial goals and lifestyle preferences. But Dorothy, realistically, retirement income from social services careers probably isn't sufficient to cover all the expenses that come with aging, especially if you face serious medical issues or need long-term care assistance that isn't fully covered by Medicare and standard insurance policies, Rebecca replied with confidence that suggested she had already calculated my financial limitations and positioned herself as the logical solution to economic challenges I might face. Besides, I think it makes sense for families to pool resources and coordinate financial planning so that everyone benefits from shared expenses and mutual support rather than trying to maintain complete independence when that might not be practical or efficient for the family as a whole. This conversation revealed Rebecca's assumptions about financial control and decision-making authority that positioned herself and Michael as the family's primary economic resources while viewing elderly parents as potential dependents who should be grateful for their willingness to provide care and support when their own resources proved inadequate for maintaining independence and dignity during aging and health transitions. Rebecca, I appreciate your willingness to help if I ever need family support, I said carefully, testing her assumptions about family financial dynamics and observing her expectations about gratitude and decision-making authority. But I also want to maintain my independence and autonomy as much as possible, rather than becoming dependent on my children's financial resources or feeling like a burden who requires management and care. Dorothy, I'm not suggesting that you become dependent or burdensome, Rebecca protested, apparently believing that her offer of future assistance demonstrated generosity rather than revealing assumptions about power dynamics and financial control that could affect family relationships and decision-making processes. I'm just saying that it's practical and responsible for families to coordinate resources and support systems so that everyone's needs are met efficiently rather than everyone struggling independently when cooperation and shared resources could benefit everyone involved. But Rebecca's approach to family financial planning revealed her expectation that coordination and cooperation would involve her leadership and decision-making authority, with elderly parents accepting her guidance and management rather than recognizing family financial planning as a collaborative process that should respect everyone's autonomy, preferences, and accumulated wisdom about managing resources and making life decisions. This pattern continued and intensified over the following months, with Rebecca making increasingly frequent comments about family financial coordination, resource sharing, and her willingness to provide care and support for elderly parents who might eventually need assistance with housing decisions, healthcare planning, and lifestyle adjustments that could affect their independence and quality of life during retirement years. But what Rebecca never suspected was that her offers of future financial assistance and family support were being evaluated by elderly parents who controlled property resources vastly exceeding her household income and who were observing her assumptions about power dynamics, decision-making authority, and the true nature of family financial relationships when adult children believe they have become the primary economic resources for aging relatives. The third phase of my character testing strategy involved expanding Michael and Rebecca's apparent success and financial independence through additional professional opportunities and lifestyle advantages that would test their appreciation for good fortune while observing their treatment of family members they increasingly viewed as potential responsibilities rather than recognizing them as capable adults who deserved respect and consideration for their accumulated experience and continuing contributions to family relationships. In fall 2022, I arranged for Golden Valley Property Services to provide property management services for 3 apartment complexes whose owners subsequently hired Michael's law practice for tenant advocacy training and housing rights education programs. generating over $180,000 in additional revenue during the next 18 months while appearing to result from Michael's professional networking and legal expertise rather than systematic support provided through my property management companies. Client relationships: the apartment complex owners who hired Michael's law practice, Riverside Gardens, a 48-unit complex in Natomas, Oak Tree Village, a 32-unit property in South Sacramento, and Meadowbrook Apartments, a 56-unit development in Elk Grove, were all existing clients of Golden Valley Property Services who had received comprehensive property management services that enabled improved tenant relations and legal compliance, while reducing operating costs and increasing property values. But the connection between Michael's new legal clients and my property management company was invisible to him and Rebecca, who viewed the succession of new contracts as evidence of their growing professional reputation and legal expertise rather than recognizing the systematic support and business development assistance that was being provided through family resources and community relationships they never suspected existed. "Dorothy, Michael's law practice is really hitting its stride now," Rebecca announced during a family dinner in December 2022, speaking with obvious satisfaction about professional achievements she attributed entirely to their legal skills and strategic business development abilities. "He's landed 3 major new clients in the past 6 months, and our household income for this year will be almost triple what we projected when we first got married. The apartment complex training contracts alone are worth over $60,000 annually each, and they're so pleased with Michael's legal expertise and training programs that they want to extend our contracts for 4 additional years with potential for increased scope and budget allocation," she continued, describing success that was indeed impressive but had been facilitated through client introductions and property management arrangements she never suspected were connected to family support. "Plus, the apartment owners are referring other property management companies to Michael's practice based on the training results they've achieved, so our monthly revenue is becoming more stable and predictable rather than depending on constantly finding new clients to maintain business growth." Rebecca's description of Michael's law practice success revealed her assumption that professional achievements resulted entirely from individual merit and legal competence, without acknowledging external factors, favorable circumstances, or support systems that might have contributed to opportunities and advantages that enabled business growth and client development. "It sounds like Michael is building a really strong foundation for long-term legal practice success," I observed, testing Rebecca's willingness to acknowledge factors beyond individual control that might affect professional performance and client relationships over time. "Are you also preparing for potential challenges or economic changes that could affect your client relationships and revenue streams, especially since property management companies and housing organizations can be particularly vulnerable to economic uncertainty and budget constraints during difficult periods?" Rebecca's response to my question about business risk management and economic uncertainty revealed her growing confidence about professional invulnerability and her unwillingness to acknowledge legitimate concerns about factors beyond individual control that could affect legal practice success and financial stability during changing economic conditions. "Dorothy, I understand that business involves some level of risk and uncertainty, but Michael's client relationships are really strong and our contract terms provide substantial protection against budget cuts or sudden changes in legal service priorities," Rebecca replied with confidence that suggested she viewed business planning as primarily about individual competence rather than recognizing economic and market factors that could affect entire industries and client sectors simultaneously. "Besides, our clients are seeing measurable results from Michael's legal training and advocacy services, which means they're getting real value for their investment rather than just spending money on legal services without clear returns on their legal expenses and training costs. More importantly, we've diversified our client base across different property types and management companies, so we're not overly dependent on any single client or market sector that could create vulnerability if one area of the economy experiences problems or budget constraints." Rebecca's analysis of their business risk management strategies demonstrated sophisticated thinking about client relationships and revenue diversification, but also revealed her assumption that good planning and professional competence could provide protection against economic factors beyond individual control, and her unwillingness to acknowledge that professional success often involves favorable circumstances and external support that warrant appreciation and humility rather than confidence about career invulnerability. This pattern of increasing professional confidence combined with growing assumptions about family financial dynamics and caregiving responsibilities continued throughout 2023. As Michael's law practice achieved consistent success and profitability while they remained completely unaware that much of their business foundation was being supported through family wealth and community relationships they never suspected existed, but Rebecca's growing success and financial Independence were also accompanied by increasingly concerning changes in her treatment of family relationships and her expectations about elderly parents' roles in her life and decision-making processes that revealed fundamental character issues about respect, appreciation, and mutual support across generations and changing circumstances. During family gatherings and casual conversations, Rebecca began demonstrating impatience with elderly parents' opinions about professional decisions, political issues, housing choices, and lifestyle preferences that didn't align with her assumptions about modern approaches to success and financial achievement. She would interrupt conversations to correct information she considered outdated or irrelevant, dismiss concerns about business risks or economic uncertainty as unnecessary worry from people who didn't understand contemporary legal practice and business development, and redirect discussions toward topics that showcased her professional expertise and current success rather than acknowledging family members' accumulated wisdom and continuing capability for meaningful contributions to family conversations and decision-making. Dorothy, I think you're overthinking the complexities involved in legal practice management and economic planning, Rebecca would say when I expressed concerns about debt levels, market uncertainty, or the importance of maintaining financial reserves for unexpected challenges that could affect business performance and family security. The legal services economy has been stable for several years now, housing advocacy funding continues to grow, and property management demand supports consistent business growth across most sectors, she would continue, speaking with the tone of someone explaining obvious facts to family members who lacked current information or sophisticated understanding of economic trends and business conditions. Besides, successful legal practices need to take calculated risks and invest in growth opportunities rather than hoarding cash and missing chances for expansion that could provide much better long-term security than conservative financial management that doesn't adapt to changing market conditions. Rebecca's dismissive attitude toward family concerns about business risks and economic uncertainty revealed her growing assumption that professional success had given her superior knowledge and judgment about financial planning and decision-making, while positioning elderly parents as overly cautious and out of touch with modern business practices and economic realities. But what concerned me most about Rebecca's changing attitudes toward family relationships was her increasing expectation that family conversations and social interactions should focus on her and Michael's professional achievements and financial success, with elderly parents serving primarily as audience for their accomplishments rather than recognizing family gatherings as opportunities for mutual sharing, emotional support, and collaborative problem-solving that should include everyone's perspectives, experiences, and continuing contributions to family relationships. Rebecca, we're proud of Michael's legal practice success and your financial achievements, I said during one family dinner when her self-focused conversation had dominated the entire evening without acknowledgement of other family members' activities, concerns, or experiences that might warrant attention and discussion. But family time should also include sharing about everyone's lives and interests, rather than only focusing on work and business topics that exclude other family members from meaningful participation in conversations and relationship building. Dorothy, I'm not excluding anyone from conversation, Rebecca protested with obvious irritation about criticism of her communication style and assumptions about family interaction priorities. I'm sharing important updates about our professional lives and business developments that affect our entire family's financial security and future opportunities. Besides, our business success is relevant to everyone because it creates stability and resources that benefit all of us, rather than just being personal achievements that only matter to Michael and me. Rebecca's response revealed her expectation that family members should be interested in and supportive of her professional success because it created benefits for everyone, while failing to recognize that family relationships require reciprocal interest, emotional support, and acknowledgement of other family members' experiences, achievements, and contributions that deserve attention and appreciation regardless of their economic impact or professional significance. This pattern of self-focused conversation combined with growing assumptions about family financial dependence and caregiving arrangements created increasingly uncomfortable family dynamics that tested my patience and revealed concerning character issues about empathy, respect, and mutual support that would ultimately determine Rebecca's access to family wealth and her role in future inheritance and estate planning decisions. The fourth phase of my character testing strategy involved observing Rebecca's response to minor family needs and requests for assistance that would reveal her willingness to prioritize family relationships over personal convenience when supporting elderly parents required time, effort, or temporary adjustments to her professional schedule and lifestyle preferences. Throughout 2023, I created several situations that required Rebecca and Michael's assistance with practical tasks, transportation needs, and family obligations that would test their availability and attitude when helping elderly parents involved personal sacrifice or inconvenience that could interfere with their work commitments and social activities. When I mentioned needing help organizing and cleaning my garage and storage areas, which had become cluttered with boxes and household items that I was finding difficult to manage independently, Rebecca's response was to suggest hiring professional organizing services rather than offering family assistance that would require her personal time and physical effort on a weekend when she preferred to focus on rest and leisure activities. Dorothy, you should really consider hiring professional organizers for garage cleaning and storage organization rather than trying to handle physical tasks that could cause injury or strain, Rebecca suggested when I asked if she and Michael could help me sort through accumulated household items and reorganize storage areas during a Saturday afternoon when they had no scheduled work commitments. Professional organizing services aren't that expensive for small jobs, and they have the equipment and experience to handle storage safely and efficiently rather than risking injury or damage that could create bigger problems and expenses later. Rebecca's suggestion was practical and showed some concern for my physical safety, but her immediate focus on professional services rather than family assistance revealed her preference for solutions that didn't require her personal involvement or time commitment. When helping elderly parents involved weekend activities that could interfere with her rest and personal time. When I needed transportation to medical appointments because a medication side effect made driving temporarily unsafe, Rebecca's availability was consistently limited by work commitments, legal training conferences, and professional networking events that prevented her from providing family support during routine healthcare needs that required flexibility and family prioritization over professional convenience. Dorothy, I'd really like to help you with medical transportation, but this week is particularly challenging because Michael has court appearances on Tuesday and Thursday, and I'm attending a legal conference in San Francisco on Wednesday that could lead to new networking opportunities and potential client referrals, Rebecca would explain when I requested assistance with routine medical appointments that were important for my ongoing health monitoring and preventive care. Maybe you could schedule your appointments for different times when we're more available, or you could use medical transport services that specialize in elderly patient transportation and are probably more reliable than depending on family members who have unpredictable work schedules and professional commitments. Rebecca's response to requests for medical transportation assistance revealed her expectation that family healthcare needs should accommodate her professional schedule rather than recognizing that supporting elderly parents during medical appointments was a family responsibility that might require temporary adjustments to work commitments and professional priorities. When I mentioned feeling overwhelmed by paperwork related to insurance claims, tax preparation, and household financial management, which had become more complex since Louisa's death and estate settlement, Rebecca's response was to suggest that I hire professional services rather than offering to help with tasks that could benefit from her organizational skills and professional knowledge while providing opportunities for family connection and mutual support. Dorothy, you should really consider hiring a bookkeeper or financial services professional to handle insurance claims and tax preparation rather than trying to manage all that paperwork yourself, Rebecca suggested when I described feeling stressed about administrative tasks that had become more time-consuming and confusing since handling estate-related financial matters and property management responsibilities. Professional services might cost a few $100s, but they would save you time and stress while ensuring that everything is handled correctly rather than risking mistakes that could cost more money or create problems with insurance coverage and tax filing requirements. Again, Rebecca's suggestions were practical and demonstrated some understanding of my needs, but her consistent focus on professional services rather than family assistance revealed her unwillingness to invest personal time and effort in supporting elderly parents when helping would require her to use organizational skills and knowledge for family benefit rather than professional advancement and income generation. Each of these situations provided valuable information about Rebecca's priorities and character when family support required genuine sacrifice rather than minimal effort or financial assistance that didn't affect her professional schedule and personal convenience. Her consistent preference for professional services over family involvement revealed her assumptions about appropriate boundaries between family relationships and individual independence, while demonstrating her unwillingness to prioritize family needs when support required personal time, physical effort, or temporary disruption of her preferred lifestyle and work schedule. But what Rebecca never realized was that each situation where she chose convenience over family support was being carefully observed and documented by elderly parents who controlled property resources that could either reward genuine family loyalty or deliver devastating consequences for character failures and relationship priorities that revealed her true values when family support required personal sacrifice rather than professional benefit. The stage was being set for the ultimate test of Rebecca's character, a test that would occur during a genuine family crisis when her response would determine whether she continued benefiting from secret family wealth that had been supporting her success for years, or whether she learned the most expensive lesson of her life about the true cost of dismissing elderly parents when they needed family support most desperately, and her assistance could make the difference between family security and devastating consequences that would affect everyone she claimed to care about. But Rebecca had no idea that the elderly mother-in-law she was planning to eventually manage and control was actually the source of her housing security, professional opportunities, and comfortable lifestyle, and that her treatment of her elderly relative during our family's greatest crisis would determine whether she continued benefiting from secret family wealth or discovered that assumptions about elderly parents' powerlessness can destroy everything you thought you had earned through your own merit and independence. The patterns of selfishness and family exploitation that would ultimately cost Rebecca access to $6.8 million in family wealth weren't sudden developments that emerged during her marriage to Michael when professional success made them feel financially independent. They were consistent character traits that had been evident since their early relationship, but that I had consistently rationalized, excused, or attributed to normal adjustment phases rather than recognizing them as fundamental personality flaws that would define her approach to family relationships and moral obligations throughout her entire married life. Looking back now with the painful clarity that comes from expensive experience and devastating betrayal, I can see that Rebecca's character issues had been evident from her first family dinner in 2017, through their engagement period, wedding planning, and early marriage years, revealing a pattern of taking credit for advantages she didn't earn while minimizing others' contributions to her success, treating family support as entitlement rather than generosity, and prioritizing personal convenience over family loyalty whenever genuine sacrifice was required for maintaining relationships based on mutual care and respect. During Rebecca's first year of dating Michael, she demonstrated exceptional social intelligence and professional ambition that made her attractive to someone seeking a partner who could contribute to his career advancement and social status. But she consistently struggled with family gatherings, emotional support for others, and situations that required her to prioritize group harmony over individual recognition and personal advancement. The most revealing early test of Rebecca's character occurred during Thanksgiving 2017, when I was recovering from minor surgery for a torn rotator cuff that required my arm to be in a sling for 6 weeks, limiting my ability to prepare the traditional family dinner that had been my responsibility for over 20 years. Our family faced the first test of Rebecca's willingness to sacrifice her holiday plans to help family members during a temporary period when additional support was needed, but Rebecca's response to my injury and our family's need for holiday assistance revealed her fundamental inability to prioritize family needs over personal comfort and social activities. Instead of recognizing that my injury created an opportunity for her to demonstrate family commitment and earn appreciation through genuine service, Rebecca seemed to view my limitations as an inconvenient disruption to her holiday expectations and social plans. "Dorothy, I know you're dealing with the shoulder surgery recovery, but Michael and I already made plans to spend Thanksgiving weekend with my college friends who are visiting from Los Angeles," Rebecca explained during a family dinner 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, when we were discussing holiday arrangements and family gathering logistics. "We could maybe help with some food preparation on Thursday morning before we leave for the weekend," she offered half-heartedly, "but we can't really cancel our plans because this is the only time all my friends will be together this year, and we've been planning this reunion for months." Rebecca was essentially telling us that her social plans with college friends took priority over family holiday traditions and supporting an elderly family member during medical recovery, revealing her assumption that family obligations should accommodate her personal preferences rather than recognizing that family relationships sometimes require temporary sacrifice of social activities for more important commitments. "Rebecca, Thanksgiving has always been an important family tradition for us," Michael had said, apparently surprised by her unwillingness to prioritize family over social plans during a year when family support was particularly needed. "I understand that seeing your friends is important, but maybe we could arrange to meet them on Friday instead of leaving on Thursday, so we can help Mom with dinner preparation and spend time with family during the actual holiday." Rebecca's response to Michael's reasonable suggestion revealed her impatience with family members who expected her to adjust personal plans for family commitments, and her unwillingness to acknowledge that supporting elderly relatives during medical recovery might be more important than social gatherings with friends. "Michael, I already told my friends we'd be there Thursday evening, and they've made dinner reservations and planned activities around our participation," she replied with obvious frustration about being asked to modify her social schedule for family obligations. Besides, Dorothy has been managing holiday dinners independently for years, and a minor shoulder injury shouldn't prevent her from organizing Thanksgiving with a little help from other family members who don't have prior commitments. This incident should have been a major warning sign that Rebecca was developing concerning attitudes about family relationships, mutual support, and responsibilities to others that required immediate attention and character development intervention. But instead of recognizing it as a serious character issue that needed correction, Michael and I chose to interpret her behavior as normal adjustment challenges for someone learning to balance multiple family and social relationships. "She's just trying to maintain important friendships while learning how to be part of our family," I explained to Michael, unconsciously making excuses for behavior that was clearly problematic and hurtful to family relationships. "Rebecca probably doesn't realize how much help I actually need during the recovery period, and she'll learn to prioritize family needs as she becomes more comfortable with family traditions and expectations." But Michael and I found it easier to focus on Rebecca's professional achievements and social confidence rather than confronting difficult behavioral issues that would require sustained attention. Direct conversations, and potentially uncomfortable family discussions about values and expectations for treating family members with consideration and respect. The pattern continued and intensified during Rebecca's engagement to Michael and their wedding planning process, which should have been an excellent opportunity for her to demonstrate commitment to family relationships while building stronger connections with extended family members. But her approach to wedding planning revealed the depth of her self-centered thinking and her fundamental inability to understand that major family events required consideration for others' needs and financial limitations. Rebecca's approach to wedding planning was based entirely on creating the perfect social media event that would showcase her personal taste and professional success, rather than recognizing that weddings should celebrate family relationships and bring people together through meaningful traditions and inclusive celebrations that consider everyone's comfort and financial circumstances. "Dorothy, Michael, and I have been discussing our wedding vision, and we want to create something really special that reflects our professional achievements and sophisticated taste," Rebecca announced during a family dinner 6 months before their scheduled wedding date. "We're looking at venues that can accommodate about 200 guests, with premium catering and professional photography that will create lasting memories and beautiful photos for our social media and professional networking." When I asked about the budget for this elaborate wedding celebration, Rebecca's response revealed her assumption that family members should contribute financially to her dream wedding regardless of their own financial limitations or retirement planning needs. "We're estimating total costs around $65,000, which is actually quite reasonable for the quality and scope we're planning," Rebecca explained with confidence that suggested she had already determined how this substantial expense would be funded. "Michael's law practice income can cover about half the costs, and we're hoping that family members will contribute to help make this celebration possible as an investment in our future and family relationships." Rebecca was essentially asking elderly parents on fixed incomes to provide $30,000 for her wedding celebration, while presenting this request as family investment rather than acknowledging that wedding expenses represent discretionary spending that should be funded by the couple getting married, not their parents' retirement savings. "Rebecca, $30,000 represents a significant portion of our retirement savings," I replied carefully, "and while we want to support your wedding celebration, we also need to be responsible about our own financial security during retirement years, when our income is fixed and we may face increased medical expenses." Rebecca's response to our honest explanation of financial limitations revealed her impatience with family members who couldn't provide the level of financial support she considered appropriate for her wedding plans, and her unwillingness to adjust her expectations based on family financial realities. "Dorothy, I understand that retirement budgets can be tight, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime celebration that will benefit our entire family through the relationships we build and the professional connections we establish," she argued with growing frustration about family financial limitations that interfered with her wedding vision. Besides, successful families invest in each other's important milestones rather than prioritizing individual financial security over shared celebrations that create lasting memories and strengthen family bonds. Rebecca was arguing that family financial security should be sacrificed for her wedding celebration, while simultaneously pressuring elderly parents to view wedding expenses as family obligations rather than recognizing them as personal choices that should be funded by the people making those choices. This conversation revealed Rebecca's fundamental assumption that family members existed to facilitate her personal goals and lifestyle preferences, rather than understanding that family relationships require mutual consideration and respect for everyone's financial limitations and personal priorities. But what made Rebecca's wedding planning approach particularly concerning was her complete lack of acknowledgement that we had already provided substantial support by allowing her and Michael to live rent-free since their marriage. saving them thousands of dollars monthly that could have been allocated toward wedding expenses instead of expecting additional family financial contributions. The wedding ultimately took place with a budget reduced to $35,000. Funded entirely by Michael's law practice income and a small contribution from Rebecca's parents, but the experience revealed troubling patterns about Rebecca's expectations for family financial support and her assumptions about elderly relatives' obligations to fund younger generations' lifestyle choices and social celebrations. Throughout 2020 and 2021, as Michael's law practice continued growing and their lifestyle became increasingly comfortable due to free housing and subsidized professional expenses they never acknowledged, Rebecca's sense of entitlement about family relationships and her assumptions about my role in facilitating their success became more pronounced and explicit. Dorothy, I've been thinking about our family's long-term planning, and I think it would make sense for us to coordinate more closely on household management and financial decision-making while you transition toward retirement, Rebecca announced. During a visit in early 2021, Michael and I could help you with day-to-day financial management and household responsibilities while you focus on health and wellness during your retirement years, and then we could gradually expand our responsibilities as you need more assistance and support. Rebecca, my financial planning involves complex decisions that require experience and understanding of long-term implications, I replied, testing her assumptions about family financial arrangements and decision-making authority. I understand. It's complicated, she agreed readily, but I have business education and organizational skills to learn whatever management tasks you need help with. Besides, it would be more efficient to have younger family members handling finances and household management while you enjoy retirement without stressful responsibilities. Rebecca's approach to family financial planning revealed that she had never seriously considered my financial needs or retirement security. She was already assuming that household management would transfer to her based on family relationships rather than earning responsibility through demonstrated character and competence. The crisis that would test Rebecca's character and determine her financial future began on March 14, 2024. With what initially seemed like routine medical symptoms that I attributed to stress from managing property investments and the general health concerns that come with aging and maintaining active lifestyle during retirement years. At 5:45 a.m. on that Thursday morning, I woke up experiencing symptoms that were concerning enough to warrant immediate medical evaluation: severe chest pain that radiated down my left arm, difficulty breathing that suggested possible cardiac issues, and dizziness that indicated potential cardiovascular emergency requiring urgent hospital assessment and treatment. I'm having severe chest pain and trouble breathing, I managed to say while calling 911, recognizing these symptoms as potential signs of heart attack or other cardiac emergency requiring immediate hospital evaluation and treatment. I think I need emergency medical attention. I immediately called Michael's phone to inform him about the medical emergency and request family support during what could potentially be a serious health crisis requiring family presence, emotional support, and assistance with medical decision-making. If my condition affected my ability to communicate with healthcare providers. Michael, I'm having severe chest pain and the paramedics are taking me to Mercy General Hospital Emergency Department, I explained when he answered his phone. I need you and Rebecca to meet me there as soon as possible because this could be very serious and I may need help with medical decisions and family support today. Michael's immediate response revealed his priorities when family support required personal sacrifice and disruption of his morning routine. Mom, what time did this happen? Because Rebecca and I both have important meetings this morning that could really affect our professional obligations and client relationships. Michael, I'm having a medical emergency that could be life-threatening, I said, hardly able to believe that we were having this conversation about their professional priorities while I was being transported to emergency treatment for potential heart attack. I understand it's a medical situation, he replied with the tone of someone being asked to make unreasonable sacrifices, but can't you handle the hospital visits and medical consultations until we know more about what's actually wrong and whether it's serious enough to require family involvement? Besides, Rebecca has a client presentation this morning that represents a really important opportunity for our household income, and canceling last minute could damage our professional reputation and potentially cost us referrals that could determine our financial growth for the next year. At the hospital, I was diagnosed with acute myocardial infarction, a significant heart attack affecting multiple areas of my heart muscle, requiring immediate treatment with cardiac catheterization and stent placement to restore blood flow and prevent additional heart damage and potential life-threatening complications. The cardiologist explained that the next 24 to 48 hours would be critical for determining the extent of heart muscle damage and my prospects for recovery of cardiac function and overall health. Mrs. Martinez, you've suffered a significant heart Attack that required immediate intervention to restore blood flow to your heart muscle, Dr. Patricia Kim explained after my emergency cardiac catheterization procedure and stent placement. The procedure was successful, and we've restored circulation to the affected areas, but we'll need to monitor your recovery closely over the next several days to assess heart function and prevent complications. Will I need ongoing medical monitoring or family assistance during the recovery process? I asked, trying to understand the severity of my condition and the level of family support that might be required during treatment and rehabilitation. Heart attack recovery often involves several weeks of cardiac rehabilitation, medication management, and lifestyle adjustments that benefit significantly from family support and advocacy during treatment planning and recovery coordination. Dr. Kim replied. Many patients experience anxiety, depression, or concerns about activity limitations that can affect recovery motivation and compliance with treatment recommendations. Additionally, cardiac recovery requires careful attention to warning signs, medication schedules, and follow-up appointments that can be overwhelming for patients who are dealing with the emotional impact of a major health event while adjusting to new limitations and lifestyle changes. At 2:15 p.m., while I was in the cardiac intensive care unit being monitored for potential complications and beginning the early stages of heart attack recovery, Michael and Rebecca finally arrived at the hospital, nearly 8 hours after my emergency call and only after completing their morning professional obligations, but their arrival at the hospital revealed that they viewed this medical emergency primarily as an inconvenience that disrupted their daily schedule rather than recognizing it as a serious family crisis that required their full attention and emotional support during what could have been the most frightening day of my life. "Mom, we're sorry we couldn't get here earlier, but we both had client commitments that we couldn't cancel without causing major problems for our professional relationships," Michael explained as they entered my hospital room, speaking with the tone of people who had made reasonable choices about balancing professional and family obligations. "How are you feeling, and what did the doctors say about your condition and recovery timeline?" Rebecca asked, but her body language and distracted behavior suggested that she viewed this hospital visit as a brief obligation rather than an opportunity to provide meaningful emotional support during a medical crisis. "The doctors said I had a significant heart attack and will need several weeks of recovery and rehabilitation," I explained, observing their reactions to news that would require sustained family support and potentially affect their comfortable lifestyle and professional schedules. "That sounds challenging, but heart attack recovery is usually very successful with modern medical treatment," Rebecca replied dismissively, "and there are excellent cardiac rehabilitation programs and support services that can handle most of the recovery assistance without requiring extensive family involvement. Besides, you've always been very independent and capable of managing health challenges, so I'm sure you'll do fine with professional medical support and the rehabilitation resources the hospital provides." Rebecca's response revealed that she viewed my heart attack recovery as primarily a medical issue that should be handled by professionals rather than recognizing it as a family crisis that required emotional support, practical assistance, and ongoing care from people who cared about my well-being and recovery success. But what happened next would reveal the true depth of Rebecca's character and cost her everything she thought she was working toward in ways that would change both our lives permanently and irreversibly. During our conversation about recovery planning and discharge arrangements, the hospital social worker brought paperwork related to medical directives, insurance authorizations, and emergency contact information that required updating and signatures for continued treatment and rehabilitation planning. "Mrs. Martinez, we need to update your emergency contact information and medical directive forms to ensure that we have current information for treatment decisions and family communication during your recovery period," the social worker explained, while presenting several forms that required careful review and completion. "These forms will also designate family members who can receive medical information and participate in treatment planning discussions if you're unable to make decisions independently during any complications or additional medical procedures." As I began reviewing the medical forms and insurance documents, Rebecca became visibly impatient with the time required for careful reading and consideration of medical directives that would affect my treatment and recovery planning. "Dorothy, these forms are pretty standard medical paperwork that just update your hospital records," Rebecca said with obvious irritation about the time being spent on document review. "Just sign the papers already, we don't have all day for this drama." "These medical directives are important legal documents that affect my treatment decisions and family involvement in my healthcare," I replied, shocked by her dismissive attitude toward documents that could determine my medical care and recovery support. The social worker explained that these forms designate who can make medical decisions if I'm unable to do so myself, and I want to understand exactly what I'm authorizing before signing anything. Rebecca's response to my reasonable concerns about medical directive review revealed her complete lack of respect for my autonomy and decision-making authority during a medical crisis, and her assumption that elderly patients should quickly comply with administrative requirements rather than carefully considering documents that could affect their healthcare and family relationships. "Dorothy, you're overthinking simple hospital paperwork that every patient signs during medical emergencies," she said with growing frustration about my careful approach to medical document review. "The hospital social workers handle these forms hundreds of times, and they know what's standard and appropriate for heart attack patients. Besides, Michael and I need to get back to work this afternoon because we have client obligations that can't be rescheduled, and spending hours on routine paperwork delays isn't helping anyone involved in this situation." At that moment, I realized that Rebecca viewed my heart attack emergency as an administrative inconvenience that was preventing her from returning to her professional obligations, rather than understanding that I was facing a potentially life-threatening medical crisis that required family support and careful attention to medical decisions that could affect my recovery and long-term health. But Rebecca's next statement would reveal her true character and cost her access to millions of dollars in property wealth in ways that would destroy everything she thought she had built through her own merit and professional success. "Look, Dorothy. Michael and I have been discussing this situation, and we need to be honest with you about something important," Rebecca said with the tone of someone delivering necessary but unwelcome news. "You're not our problem anymore. We have our own lives and responsibilities, and we can't keep dropping everything to deal with elderly parents who have medical emergencies and expect us to sacrifice our professional goals and financial security to provide care and support that interferes with our career advancement and family priorities. You need to develop your own support systems and care arrangements rather than depending on us for help that we're not able to provide without sacrificing our own future and financial stability. We're not responsible for managing your medical issues and recovery needs when we have our own professional obligations and lifestyle goals that require our full attention and commitment." I stared at Rebecca in complete disbelief, feeling the full impact of her character and her assumptions about family responsibilities during medical emergencies. While I was recovering from a heart attack that could have killed me, my daughter-in-law was abandoning our family because providing support during medical crisis interfered with her professional priorities and personal convenience, but Rebecca had made the most catastrophic miscalculation of her life. What she didn't know was that her burdensome elderly mother-in-law actually controlled the property empire that had been secretly supporting her comfortable lifestyle for years, and that her abandonment during our family's greatest crisis would trigger consequences more devastating than she could imagine. The next morning, while I remained in cardiac intensive care learning about heart attack recovery and long-term lifestyle changes, I contacted my attorney Jennifer Walsh and property manager Robert Chen to implement immediate and comprehensive changes to all family property arrangements, business relationships, and estate planning that would reflect Rebecca's true character as demonstrated during our medical emergency. "Jennifer, I need to make immediate and significant changes to all property arrangements involving my son and daughter-in-law," I explained during our emergency consultation conducted by phone from the hospital. "Yesterday's events have revealed character issues that make it clear they cannot be trusted with family wealth or property relationships, and I want to remove them completely from any housing benefits or property advantages they've been receiving through family resources." "Mrs. Martinez, what specific changes are you considering?" Jennifer asked with appropriate concern about major financial decisions made during family medical crisis and emotional stress. "I want to remove Michael and Rebecca completely from any inheritance considerations, terminate all property relationships and housing support provided through the Martinez Family Property Trust, and transfer the family home and commercial properties to my neighbor Martha Thompson, who has demonstrated more genuine care and concern during this medical emergency than my own family members," I explained, describing the full scope of consequences that Rebecca's abandonment had earned. "That would affect the house they've been living in rent-free, the commercial office space where Michael's law practice operates, and all property management client relationships that have been generating legal service contracts," Jennifer confirmed, beginning to understand the magnitude of Rebecca's miscalculation. Over the following week, while I began the slow process of heart attack recovery and cardiac rehabilitation that would ultimately restore most of my heart function but require months of medical treatment and lifestyle adjustment, I implemented comprehensive changes to all family property arrangements that would teach Rebecca the true cost of abandoning elderly family members during medical emergencies. The family home that Michael and Rebecca had been living in rent-free for 6 years was transferred immediately to my neighbor Martha Thompson, a 68-year-old retired nurse who had visited me daily during my hospital stay, coordinated meal preparation for my return home, and offered ongoing assistance with household tasks and transportation needs during my cardiac recovery period. Martha had demonstrated more genuine family loyalty and concern during my medical crisis than my own son and daughter-in-law, spending her own time and resources to ensure that I received proper support and care during the most vulnerable period of my life. The deed transfer to Martha included immediate termination of Michael and Rebecca's occupancy rights, requiring them to vacate the $875,000 house within 30 days and find alternative housing at current Sacramento market rates, which had increased by nearly 60% since they began living rent-free in 2018. Golden Valley Property Services terminated all property management contracts with apartment complexes that had been hiring Michael's law practice, withdrawing property management services and legal service referrals that had generated over $240,000 in revenue for his practice during the previous 2 years. The apartment complex owners discovered that their property management and legal service arrangements had been connected through family relationships that no longer existed. The commercial office space that had housed Michael's law practice at below market rates was also transferred to Martha Thompson, who immediately raised the rent to current market levels and terminated the favorable lease terms that had been saving Michael's practice over $4,800 monthly in office expenses for the past 2 years. Most devastatingly, Michael's law practice lost 85% of its client base and revenue within 8 weeks of Rebecca's hospital abandonment, as property management companies and housing organizations discovered that their contracts had been facilitated through family connections rather than Michael's professional competence and reputation. 4 months after telling me that I was not their problem anymore, Michael and Rebecca faced housing displacement, professional reputation destruction, and financial collapse that eliminated everything they had assumed was evidence of their independence and professional success. Their attempts to secure alternative housing were unsuccessful because rental applications revealed that their previous housing had been provided rent-free through family support rather than demonstrating genuine rental payment history. Their efforts to rebuild client relationships failed because potential customers learned about their abandonment of elderly family members during medical emergency, creating character concerns that affected their professional credibility and business trustworthiness. Michael made numerous attempts to restore family relationships and property advantages through apologies, explanations about stress and poor judgment, and promises about future family support that would never be tested because the opportunity for earning family wealth and property access had been permanently eliminated through Rebecca's actions during my heart attack emergency. Mom, I know Rebecca said some terrible things at the hospital, and I want to apologize and make things right between us, Michael said during a phone call 8 months after my heart attack, when the full scope of their financial collapse had become apparent and he realized that their abandonment had triggered consequences affecting every aspect of their personal and professional lives. Rebecca was stressed about the medical emergency and worried about how caregiving responsibilities might affect our professional obligations, but she should never have said that you weren't our problem, he continued with what sounded like genuine remorse but came too late to prevent the consequences that had already destroyed their housing security and professional foundation. Is there any way we can rebuild our family relationship and possibly restore some of the housing arrangements that have been affected by the misunderstanding about our commitment to family support during medical emergencies? Michael, Rebecca's abandonment during my heart attack wasn't a misunderstanding or temporary stress reaction, I replied. It was a revelation of her true character and priorities when family support required genuine sacrifice rather than convenient assistance. That didn't interfere with her personal goals. The housing arrangements and property advantages you lost weren't coincidental market changes or economic problems, I continued, revealing the scope of family property control they had never suspected. They were direct consequences of abandoning elderly family members who had been secretly supporting your success for years while testing your character and family loyalty. The $6.8 million property estate that you assumed would eventually be your inheritance has been transferred to Martha Thompson, who demonstrated more genuine family loyalty during my medical crisis than my own son and daughter-in-law, I explained, letting them understand the full cost of their betrayal. Rebecca's statement declaring me not your problem cost you more money than most people earn in several lifetimes. 18 months after my heart attack, Michael's law practice had closed permanently, his professional reputation was destroyed throughout Northern California's legal community, and their financial foundation had collapsed completely. The comfortable lifestyle they had built on assumptions about their own independence was revealed to be entirely dependent on family support they had never acknowledged or appreciated. My heart attack recovery was successful, though it required 12 months of cardiac rehabilitation, medication management, and lifestyle adjustments that I managed with assistance from professional caregivers and community resources, along with ongoing support from Martha Thompson, who had become the family member that my biological son and daughter-in-law had refused to be. The Martinez Family Property Trust Estate, now worth over $7.4 million due to continued property appreciation and rental income growth, was transferred entirely to Martha Thompson and 3 charitable organizations: the Cardiac Recovery Family Support Foundation, which provided assistance to families facing medical emergencies and caregiving challenges; the Elderly Housing Protection Agency, which helped elderly adults avoid family property exploitation and abuse; and the Community Property Development Cooperative, which continued Louise's work of providing ethical property management services to underserved communities throughout Northern California. MY will ensure that our wealth would benefit thousands of elderly people and families facing medical crises, rather than supporting adult children who viewed elderly parents as inconvenient burdens to be abandoned when caregiving required personal sacrifice and disrupted comfortable lifestyles built on family assistance they never acknowledged. Today, at age 70, I am healthy, financially secure, and surrounded by professional caregivers, community friends, and charitable organizations that provide authentic support and assistance without expecting inheritance benefits or property access in return. My heart function has recovered excellently, and I continue managing property investments and community development projects with determination and gratitude for survival and the opportunity to ensure that family wealth serves people who understand the true value of family loyalty and mutual support. The statement that seemed so important to Rebecca when she wanted to return to professional obligations rather than family medical emergency proved to be the most expensive communication of her life, costing her access to generational wealth and destroying a lifestyle built on family support she had systematically taken for granted while planning to abandon the people who had made her success possible. Rebecca learned that elderly parents who appear vulnerable during medical emergencies may actually hold the keys to property resources that disappear permanently when family loyalty proves to be conditional on convenience rather than genuine love and commitment to supporting each other through life's most challenging and vulnerable moments. Sometimes the most empowering thing elderly people can do is demonstrate that abandoning family during medical crises results in consequences more expensive than most people can imagine, and that assumptions about elderly parents' powerlessness can destroy everything you thought you were working toward when character failures reveal who you really are during times of crisis. The heart attack that seemed like inconvenient disruption to Rebecca's professional schedule became the most valuable test of her character, and her failure cost her everything while teaching her that family loyalty during medical emergencies isn't optional. It's the foundation of relationships that determine whether you deserve access to resources that could change your life forever, or whether you learn the devastating cost of viewing elderly relatives as problems to be abandoned rather than family members deserving unconditional care and respect. If you're watching this story and recognizing similar patterns in your own family relationships, remember that you have more power than you might realize, even during medical vulnerability and health challenges. You have the right to expect genuine family support during medical emergencies without being made to feel guilty about time commitment or schedule disruption that caring for elderly relatives requires. Never underestimate the power of an elderly person who appears vulnerable during medical crisis but may actually be controlling resources that determine your entire financial future. The dismissive comment that costs someone their inheritance teaches the most expensive lesson about the true value of family loyalty during life's most challenging moments. Rebecca's statement declaring me not their problem anymore became the most costly mistake of her life, and the most valuable education about the consequences of assuming that elderly parents are powerless when they're actually in complete control of everything you thought you had earned through your own merit and independence. Martha Thompson, my 68-year-old neighbor who showed genuine care during my medical crisis, now owns the $875,000 house and commercial properties that Michael and Rebecca lost through their character failure. She continues to manage the properties with the same ethical principles that Louise had established, providing affordable housing for working families while building wealth that will eventually support charitable organizations dedicated to elderly care and medical emergency support. Michael and Rebecca learned too late that family loyalty cannot be restored once it's been tested and found lacking during the moments when it matters most. They discovered that elderly parents who appear dependent during medical crises may actually be the source of everything they thought they had achieved independently, and that character failures during family emergencies can destroy lifetime opportunities for wealth and security that can never be recovered or replaced. The Martinez Family Property Trust continues to grow and provide community benefit under Martha's management, ensuring that Louise's legacy of ethical property development and community support continues while serving families who understand that genuine relationships are based on mutual care rather than expectations of inheritance or financial benefit. My story demonstrates that elderly parents have choices about how family wealth is distributed, and that those choices should reflect family members' actual character rather than biological relationships or assumptions about automatic inheritance rights. When family members reveal through their actions that they view elderly relatives as burdens rather than people deserving care and respect, they forfeit any claim to family resources regardless of their expectations or sense of entitlement. Rebecca's abandonment during my heart attack taught me that blood relationships don't guarantee family loyalty, but genuine care and support can create family bonds stronger than biology. Martha Thompson earned her inheritance through character and compassion, while Rebecca lost hers through selfishness and dismissal of family obligations during medical crisis. The most valuable inheritance I could leave wasn't money or property, it was the demonstration that character matters, that family loyalty during medical emergencies is non-negotiable, and that people who abandon others during their time of greatest need don't deserve access to resources that could have changed their lives forever, while learning that elderly parents who appear powerless may actually control everything they thought they were working toward through their own merit and independence. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.